Hello everyone, I'm Siddhartha. Thank you for watching my talk. Today I'm going to talk about the role of online review platforms in improving a firm's quality. This is joint work with Uttara at UW and Davide at USC. So we often find consumers complaining about their product or service experience on online review platforms. For example, you can have somebody on Yelp complaining about a root server in a restaurant, or somebody on Expedia who was complaining about a hotel which wasn't properly working on a hotel room. Now, if you look at these reviews, you can see that these reviews carry important information regarding a firm's quality. Therefore, in a static quality context, that is when you don't allow the quality of a firm to change, what these reviews do is they help consumers make more informed decisions. So they highlight the good features of a high quality firm and bad features of a low quality firm, and therefore help consumers separate high and low quality firms. However, in a dynamic quality context, when you allow the quality to change, what you can see is the same reviews are helping firms to improve their quality, especially low quality firms who have more to learn from consumers than say high quality firms. And therefore they can reduce the quality gap with high quality firms based on the feedback. This is also salient for service-based industries like hotels or restaurants, because the quality is more flexible as opposed to product-based industries like publishing or movies, where you have to develop a whole new project altogether to change quality. And if you look at the literature, almost the entire work on online reviews has focused on the consumer decision-making side. That is how it affects their purchase decisions, how it affects their reviewing behavior, etc. However, very little work has gone on to focus on the role of online review platforms in firms' decision-making, especially focusing on the quality aspect, which is the main focus of our paper. So this brings us to our research question, that is, do firms improve their quality by listening to customer reviews on these online platforms? And we are also interested in learning how this level of improvement could vary for different types of firms. We study this in the context of US hotel industry, which is a quintessential example of a service-based industry. And we analyze reviews from two major review platforms, TripAdvisor and Expedia, in this paper. So to answer this question, especially through observational data, we have to deal with certain important empirical challenges. So the first challenge we face as researchers is, how do we know that a hotel is listening to their customers? They're paying attention to the reviews on online platforms. Second is, obtaining a good measure, unbiased measure of quality is hard. And third, but not the least, is that there could be other factors which could be influencing the quality at the same time the firms are listening to the reviews and taking action. So we have to deal with certain identification challenges to answer this question. How do we deal with these challenges? So in our approach, what we do is we use a hotel's management response on TripAdvisor as a proxy for whether a hotel is listening to consumer reviews. So the assumption here is that a hotel that is responding to reviews on online platform like TripAdvisor is more likely to be paying attention than hotels that are not doing so. Second, to measure quality, we look at the same hotel's Expedia reviews, where we focus both on the numerical rating of the review and the text content of the review. And we choose Expedia over TripAdvisor because of two reasons. The past literature has shown that the mere presence of management response can affect how consumers review on these platforms. So for all the reviews which are coming on TripAdvisor after the management response is also a function of the presence of management response. Because there is very little response on Expedia, especially during our sample period, the reviews are unlikely to be affected by the presence of management responses because there's no management response on Expedia. Also, there are fewer fake reviews on Expedia because somebody can write a review on Expedia only if they have booked the hotel through Expedia and stayed at the hotel for at least one night, which makes it costly to leave a fake review as opposed to TripAdvisor, where anyone can write a review. To deal with the identification challenge, we use generalized difference-in-differences approach, where we exploit the variation in when the hotels start responding to reviews. So during a sample period, we have hotels that do not respond or start responding at different periods of time, and we exploit that variation across hotels for our identification through different. I'll talk about this in more detail when I formally discuss the empirical strategy. Coming to the data, our data is at the review level from TripAdvisor and Expedia, where we have the date, rating, text, and the response to the review if there was any. We have in total of around 4,200 hotels matched between the two platforms. And these hotels come from the top 50 US cities by population. And the sample period is from 10-year period from 2004 to 13. We also have hotel characteristics like whether the hotel was a chain hotel or an independent hotel, and what was like a price tier of the hotel, whether it was a budget, luxury, etc. The main outcome of interest in our research is the rating of an Expedia review, especially during the first part of the talk and the paper. That is between integer between 1 to 5, and we have close to 1.85 million reviews, and the mean rating is around 4 out of 5. Now, how are hotels responding in our sample? So in our sample of 4,200 hotels, no hotel responds on Expedia. So we have taken care of the fact that reviews are not going to be affected by the presence of management response on Expedia. However, more than 3,000 hotels respond during our sample period on TripAdvisor. And this is the graph here shows how the number of responding hotels is varying over time. As you can see, in 2004, almost no hotel was responding on TripAdvisor, but by the time 2013 came, more than 3,000 hotels are responding. And we exploit this variation for our identification. Now, to give you some descriptive evidence, what I had hinted at earlier, that is the quality gap between low quality and high quality, which can be seen as low rated and high rated firms are changing. So we define a low rated firm, a low rated hotel, as a hotel which have a below median rating in a given city and price range. So given a price tier of hotels and given the city, we try to find the hotels, we group the hotels which are below median rating as low rated and the ones above as high rated. And what I'm plotting here is the difference in the rating gap between these two groups of hotels. As you can see, on the x-axis, we have months before and after first response standardized for each hotel in a sample for the responding hotels for this graph. And what you can see is that the gap in rating gap, the average rating gap between low rated and high rated, is reducing around the time of the first response month, which it significantly reduces and stays there for at least 30 months in this graph. So this gives us some suggestive evidence that the quality gap between high and low rated firms are changing. Now, to come formally discuss our empirical specification. So we estimate the two-way fixed effects DID estimator. The main outcome of interest is rating of review I on Expedia for hotel J at time T, where T is year month. Our main independent variable is after, which says whether it's a binary indicator, whether review I was written before or after the hotel J started responding on TripAdvisor. And we have hotel fixed effects, and we have time fixed effects, which is year month fixed effects, and a couple of time varying controls like the review characteristics, how many reviews were there at the time of review, what was the average cumulative rating at the time of review, etc. And we exploit, as I was saying earlier, we exploit the cross hotel variation in the timing of first response across hotels. So because of this, we have to be careful about our identification assumption. That is, we should be thinking about the confounders which coincide with the first response and also positively affect the ratings of hotels. And I'll discuss this in more detail during our robustness checks. So to give you a pictorial view of how the effect is varying over time, what we can see is that on the x-axis, we have months standardized before and after first response for every hotel. And we can see the difference in the control group and the treatment group is sort of statistically insignificant and close to zero. However, they become positive and statistically significant in the months after the first response. So we have some validation of the parallel trend assumption in our difference in differences approach. To show you the average effect, so we estimate the same model which I showed you earlier. So for all the hotels without the controls, we find that on average, a hotel improves their rating by 0.047 stars by responding or paying attention to customer reviews. However, with control, the estimate remains very similar. But what we find is that the average effect on all the hotels is entirely driven by improvement in low-rated hotels than high-rated hotels. So the improvement in low-rated hotels is close to 0.1 stars, and while the high-rated hotels are statistically insignificant and close to zero. So this means that based what a theory predicted, that the reviews are more helpful in improving quality for low-rated firms, and this is exactly what we see, that they're able to reduce their sort of rating gap or quality gap with high-rated firms. We also look at whether this level of improvement varies between chain and independent hotels, especially only solely focusing on low-rated hotels, because those are the only hotels which show improvement. So among the low-rated hotels, is it the chain hotel or independent hotels which are improving more? We expect chain hotels to improve more because they have advantages in both costs, because of economies of scale, and also the reputation premium which they enjoy because of several franchises of the same company. So, and what we find is that something consistent with our hypothesis, that low-rated chain hotels do improve more than independent low-rated hotels. And what is further interesting is that, although I don't have the numbers here, that the baseline low-rated chain hotel has a higher rating than a baseline independent hotel. Still, the improvement is higher for chain hotels, low-rated chain hotels. Coming to the, we also, and so far we focused on the numerical rating analysis, and now we will focus on the text part of the review and try to see, although the ratings change, why did it change? Did it really change because of the complaints which the consumers were making got resolved, or due to some other reason? So to do that, what we do is, for every hotel, we find the 5 most frequently mentioned entities like bed, shuttle, staff, breakfast in the reviews for a hotel in the period before the first response, and then extract the sentiment of each of these 5 entities from all the reviews of hotel and for all hotels in our sample. So this sort of creates the new dependent variable for analysis. So earlier it was numerical rating. Now we have 5 new dependent variables, which is the sentiment score of the 5 most important or the frequently mentioned entity of a hotel. We do this based on a Google Cloud API tool for natural language processing, where if you give it a piece of text, it is able to return all the entities mentioned in that piece of text along with the sentiment score attached with it. Here is an example of a review on Expedia where room and smell were mentioned in the negative connotation, and it has a negative sentiment score, while bed, comfortable beds in great location have a positive sentiment. It is able to give us a positive sentiment score. However, smoking room was mentioned just like that, so it has a neutral sentiment score. So we do this for all the reviews, text reviews in our sample, and thus we find the sentiment scores. Here is the result. So we estimate the same specification which I showed you earlier, but we subsample into 2 data sets. That is, one is for the sentiment for entities which had a negative sentiment in the pre-period, sort of, which were problematic entities. So and the other group is the positive sentiment entities in the pre-treatment period, those entities which had a positive sentiment. What we see is here that for entities which had a negative sentiment in the pre-period, the effect is on sentiment is positive and statistically significant for all the top 5 entities, although it is lower for 5th as compared to the first most frequently mentioned entity. However, as a robustness check, we can see that the ones which had a positive sentiment in the pre-treatment period have no effect on their sentiment. That is close to 0 and statistically insignificant. Now, we also analyze the text of the responses to see whether it can tell us something about the level of attention paid to reviews by hotels. So the hypothesis here is that if hotels are using a lot of canned response or giving robotic replies to reviews, they're probably paying less attention to reviews, and we should see lower improvement in their rating as opposed to hotels that are specifically replying to reviews. So to do that, we use an algorithm called Universal Sentence Encoder, which basically converts a piece of text into a high dimensional numerical vector, where similar meaning sentences or pieces of text are mapped close to each other in the high dimensional space. Although they can have different sets of words, still they are able to give very similar representation because of the similarity in semantics. So we do this for every pair of responses for a given hotel. And based on that response pair cosine similarity, we are able to come up with a score for every hotel of response similarity. And this is what the distribution of response similarity looks like across hotels. So we have most hotels which have sort of low response similarity. That is, they are replying sort of specifically to reviews. However, there are a few hotels on the end, on the right end, you can see, which are sort of using a lot of canned responses, that the response similarity for those hotels are very high across reviews, although there's a lot of variation in the review content. There's hardly any similarity between the reviews if you do the same analysis for review. And what we find is that for these hotels which are using a lot of canned response, the effect is close to 85% lower than hotels which are sort of specifically replying to reviews. So this gives us further confidence that it is the level of attention paid and not some other factor which are driving the effects. Although we do a bunch of robustness checks, the one major robustness check which I'd like to discuss is the managerial change. So it could be that our results are driven by better and newer management, which also decide to start responding to reviews rather than paying attention and making feedback-based improvements. So what we do is that we try to understand from their responses if there was a recent managerial change in the hotel, and we exclude those hotels, and still we are able to find similar sized effects and we do some other validity checks for our proxy of listening, like frequency of response and other things. So to conclude, what our paper is showing that this online reviews, which usually help separate high and low quality firms, can actually reduce the quality gap between high and low rated firms in a dynamic quality context. And this can improve the quality in an industry, which can potentially lead to high consumer welfare. Past research has shown that platforms create value for high quality firms and the consumers, but what we are showing that it can provide value to even low quality firms by making them realize their shortcomings and giving them an opportunity to improve. Last, although there are a lot of reviews on online review platforms, but if you look at in the relative terms, fraction of customers who write a review, it is still relatively low, close to 10%. What our research is showing that you can further motivate the customers to actually leave a review if you tell them look, firms are paying attention to the reviews and taking actions and considering your review seriously. Thank you.